C-15? CANDRIP and Bill C-15. I met with, those of you that don't know, when I went to Montreal 3 weeks ago maybe, something like that. I met with Mohawk grandmothers that were, one of them was here at our meeting, Flat Point meeting. But when she went home, she's talked to the rest of the grandmothers about the meeting that we had here. Plus there was some men from the Longhouse, warrior, I think, some of them, Paul Dilleron. I know his brother Alan. I met him in 1990 when we went there. Some of us that went during 1990. But they liked our document as far as the intent and the wording, the historical and legal facts that we put forward, and basically just. And it's important to note that whatever's in there in regards to the roles of Band Council, Indian Act Band Council, and our tribal government, it's all based on historical and legal documentation. As you know, Kathy, you know a lot about the history, and most of it's, I guess it's directed at the AFN, because the AFN was negotiating with Canada and the provinces the past, I think it's been ever since Canada refused to sign UNDRIP. They said that they would work on their own CANDRIP, I guess you can call it. And then, well, first, before CANDRIP, there was Bill C-15. And in this document, it states what month. And here, I guess, they passed that in the Senate, Bill C-15. And then afterwards, CANDRIP came into play, which was only a matter of several months ago. That it was accepted by, just talking about our area from here to Cape Breton, within the 7 districts. Mostly, the majority of the band chiefs that agreed to CANDRIP. And then there's also, with CANDRIP, then there's First Nations Land Management Act too in play. And they're sort of, it all comes together. And that first FM in LA, I just saw something before I came here. They're having another meeting I was talking about, Scotty. I think it's in Ottawa. I was looking at Manny Jules from BC. Chief, I don't know if he's a chief. He used to be a chief.
And is that for the First Nation banking financial
Yeah,
management?
they're all each. What I saw was Manny Jules and other chiefs from other areas were going to make a presentation in regards to, I guess, the benefits of CANDRIP, because they're saying, well, it's going to open up the business market for our communities and extend our taxation powers, like let's say this, which if it did go, if it entered into that, and which means also, the land will open up for be used as collateral for many loans that the band wants to get for projects, whatever. But I mean, it sounds like when you're reading it, you're saying, "Oh, this is." It sounds pretty good. Liberal government is really, handing over self-government. But a lot of people don't understand that. If you look at the history from 1969, which was Trudeau's father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, tried to do the same thing. It's basically the same agenda, but it's in a different format. And right now, like I said, it sounds good, but there's chiefs, hereditary chiefs across the country that are saying no.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you can't give us federal government can't give us our sovereignty because it's already a creator given right, which is, you know, what we have in our document. Now they're having, as you had mentioned, they're having that gathering, a presentation. And I guess the way I read it, it was for chiefs and councils only. To read it.
Where's this?
I think it's in Ottawa, Kathy.
For what?
If you look at, well, it's actually for the, they're promoting the pros of CANDRIP and Bill C-15. For those of you, well, I was saying that don't know this Chief Manny Jules, he's been working on this taxation since the early 90s. And it's been rejected by many across, if you go west. Ironically, for some reason now, if you look at the maritime, Eastern Maritime, most of the chiefs and councils have accepted in accepting CANDRIP and Bill C-15. So, well, the question is, what's going to happen, because Manny Jules had always promoted the bands having taxation powers. That doesn't mean that they're going to tax corporations, or it means also taxing your people, because there's going to come a time. If you read the, I read the legal opinions on CANDRIP and Bill C-15, and especially on First Nations land management, that the pros and the cons, yeah, it gives you more flexibility in terms of wanting to do something with the land, or without getting the blessing of Indian Affairs and so forth, right? You're trying to get out from Indian Affairs, but doing it that way, also, the cons, if let's use an example, what happened with the flood here in 2018. Once you enter into the FMN land management, anything that happens environmentally or what happened to flooding, you're not going to pay, because they said, we gave you the money, here's the money. As I understand it, Mr. Woods hasn't signed down to it?
No, they haven't. I've been working on that file.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought Ross Diabo to this community.
Yeah.
And I brought the person who's in favor of the First Nation Land Management Act to the community, Katarina, so that the community can see both sides. But I'm also very diligent and projecting to council that yes, these land management acts and these First Nation financial management acts, they are all glossy and they've got a lot of benefits, but we have to look out for that one clause, okay? And it's the same thing with bilateral agreements. The government is pushing bilateral agreements. They want to work with Canada in an agreement with your community for self-government. But the one clause that they're putting in there, and I caught it in one document, and I said, you know, this needs to be changed, is that you're in confines of the reserve, okay? It's in confines of the reserve and what they consider the reserve. So it eliminates all your rights to your traditional territories and ancestral territories if you sign that agreement, because you're not contesting that. You're not contesting more. Yeah. You're saying, I'm signing this agreement, this bilateral agreement, or this land management act, because I accept responsibility that I'm just in charge of this little piece of land. And that's what it really says. It says it by default, by not acknowledging that we are on the unceded territory of Gespegawagi. Yeah. So there's a lot of documents now, there's a lot of push to try to call this Gespegawagi North and Gespegawagi South as opposed to Quebec and New Brunswick. No, it's Gespegawagi. So those are coming up more, but a lot of the chiefs don't understand that. I wish I knew where this CANDRIP meeting was in favor of CANDRIP, because I would go. I'm heading off to Ottawa on the 20th, 19th and 20th next week.
It's probably around the time that I saw it, but
yeah.
I want to make sure tonight when
and I will go because the Chiefs of Ontario asked me to join them, asked this community to join them. And what they're protesting is Bill C-53. And that is the government giving the Métis this right to declare themselves as Métis, which is a big disaster because there's no criteria right now saying that you're Métis. So anybody can say, I'm Métis, I belong to this, and then they're giving them some sovereign right to the land. Well, the nations out west are saying, no way, this is our land, this is our traditional territory. What gives Canada the right to say that these people, this group of people that self-declare themselves as a group of people, can have right to that land? And they're saying that we're not against the true Métis people, because the true Métis people do exist. They are out there, they are a tribe, but they're only Métis and they're connected to the land because of their indigenous roots. You're not a Métis because you're half Anishinaabe and half French or half white or whatever. No, you belong to a tribe, you belong to a group, they have their own language, and they're, you know, they've been neglected long enough. But the way the government is doing it, they're opening the door for anybody.
Yeah.
So if they open the door for anybody, okay, that's impacting our rights. They're not respecting that we are connected to the land. They're not respecting that, you know, that especially the tribes out west. So I'm going in support of that. They're not respecting that, you know, it is our inherent right to the land. Métis don't really have inherent right to the land. The Métis were only a created people once the settlers were here. They weren't here pre-Confederation. They weren't here pre-treaties. They weren't. They were only created after. So this is the big argument. So how can the government say, put us on equal footing and giving them the right to self-declare as a Métis?
Yeah.
It's, anybody could be a Métis in actuality. And because there's a lot of people out there that claim they're Métis, and they say, well, what's your connection to your tribe? Oh, well, you know, and they can't identify, and there's a lot of government people that are getting a lot of benefits from stating that. So this is what's being protested on Parliament Hill on the 20th of September, and I will be there. I'll be there on the 19th for the pre-meeting, the arrangement meeting, and I'll be there on the 20th because it's serious for us. Not too long ago, we had, I don't know, like, what their name was, maybe Gary, the Mennonites, yeah, they claimed that they were a part Mi'kmaq tribe.
I'm very familiar with them.
What did they call themselves? The Mennonites?
Yeah, it's not only here, in the Mohawk territory
Yes.
too. They were buying cars and having them delivered in Gespegawagi until they found out what they were doing.
Yeah.
Basically what you're saying, Kathy, yeah. I got hooked up with a professor, Daryl Baru, who in the last 2 decades have been writing books about these Métis, and he's been tracking them, as I said, the last 2 decades. Over here, we never realized how many there were, but if you look towards Carleton and New Richmond and the Gaspé Coast, they've been filing in the courts that they had more rights to the land than we did. And that whether we realize it or not, they're saying that we're Métis. And when I saw this, I tore into that chief. I wrote him a letter from this tribal council stating that you know, what you're saying has no historical or legal truth to it. It said basically you're just pretend Indians. You know, you reach down 600 years ago and say, oh, this was my ancestor. Which that doesn't work. But like Kathy is saying, Canada will embrace them because they will have the numbers. They don't question their genealogy. They question ours more than they question theirs.
That's correct.
Yeah, we have to prove to Canada, any of our children, we have to register them. Oh, well, we got to go through this, but not them. And so Daryl and I met him. He was traveling through here, and he had heard about the tribal council and what we're doing in terms of you know, fighting with the Métis on this side. He said, Gary, I'll tell you something. And I said, I'll show you something. He said, these people have been filing in the lower courts, Quebec Superior Court, and the Supreme Court of Canada, that arguing that they had more rights, they had rights to harvest, anything like we do, salmon, moose, deer, whatever, and that when I mentioned to you, they had a clause in there, which I read in their statement of claim, that they had more rights than we did, you know, to the territory. Now, that's absurd.
I know.
But that's how bold they are.
Yeah.
We're not even looking at Attleville, it's full, Hamilton, these pretend Indians, because they've been using these cards for so long. In Hamilton and whatever, the stores, but the stores turn a blind eye. It could be family members, a clerk working there, and they just take those cards, you know, that they made up, $40 I think it was to pay for them. But if we do that, you know.
Would be charged with fraud
Exactly, federal.
for
Federal.
thank you.
We're just talking about, Mike, when you came in about.
The Métis protest that's being planned, but
Thanks.
what legislation they're trying to pass, because it's similar to like the CANDRIP. You've gotta watch those documents, and there's a lot of benefits to all these land management acts, these First Nation financial management acts, that but you have to watch the wording of what you're signing into, because they'll always have a clause there that it says within the confines of Listugush as known as number 001, whatever, it's not 051, but it's A3, whatever it is on the map. And what is known as the, Restugush store, the museum area there, they have that.
Yeah.
But if you're signing off on documents and you're acknowledging that that is what you are in charge of, by default, you're saying, I have no claim to the rest of the territory,
Exactly.
by default.
Quick question though. If chief and council here, like you said, if you wanna have the wording changed, saying that if we accept those terms, I can only accept those terms by what the government had given me within this territory, but I cannot speak for the tribal council who have jurisdiction outside this.
If they put such a word in,
Yes,
that's the problem, they're not, and that's why we come back to this. It's up to us to set the record, because, like you're saying, Kathy, if we don't, well then, it'll be taken as we accept.
That's right.
And
You
we're part of it.
have to always, there was good points brought up at the last council meeting. The council is looking at entering into a framework, not an agreement, but a framework on how Canada can negotiate with us as a band. And of course, the first thing Canada wanted in there was that this is confined to this section and whatever. I brought up the points that I just brought up here, like if we do that by default, what about our territory? And who is LMG? Another council member brought up LMG. LMG is not just the elected government. LMG is the people. So, and Dr. Fred was there helping to, explain the document, if you will. And he agreed that yes, it has to come from the people, whether it be chief and council, tribal council, or grand council. He said it is the people. It's not just the Listugush Micmac elected chief and council. However, in that document, it also states that the elected chief and council are the authority for signing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we agree as a tribal council.
No, because
Right.
they tried to do the same thing when we initiated litigation with the BuzzFeed, when we challenged this pilot title, right? So when it came to ending litigation, the chief lawyer for Indian Affairs at that time, Michel Youssef or whatever his name was, when it came time to sign off on the litigation, there was 3 different parties. There was LNG and then Tribal Council and Jigu Enterprises, because we were the ones extracting that sand together with the band, with the equipment. And Tribal Council was the permit that was given to Donnie Germain at that time, and the truck riders was made from us. I signed the permit on behalf of the Tribal Council, and the Tribal Council at that time signed, but there were different members at that time.
Right.
Alex Brisk, the old members. And so what he, when it came time to sign off, Franklin Gertler, who was our lawyer at that time, was negotiating, and I was there with this Youssef guy, and he refused to have the Tribal Council sign off on the BuzzFeed ending of litigation. He said no. At that time, Allison Metallic was the chief. He said, we want the chief to sign off on behalf of the Tribal Council. I said, that ain't it's not going to happen. We initiated litigation. We were recognized by the court. even though Busty's lawyer tried to minimize and, erode our tribal council status, he found out soon enough that that wasn't the case. We've never relinquished our sovereignty to anybody, any foreign nation, whether it was the French or the English, and it states so. Proof of that was the treaties that we presented in the court, which started from 1752 to 60, 61, 79 over here, the rest of the treaty. So that was it. They knew, once they knew they couldn't do that, then Cormier, which was Busty's lawyer, must have told Busty, I think it's best you try to negotiate with the band council on whatever money that he can get. As far as we were concerned, we weren't going to pay him a dime. But we had our meetings and we said as long as we get the land back, that was the main reason we fought it anyway. Whether the band wants to pay whatever, well that's them. But long story short, Yusuf finally accepted that I would sign on behalf of the tribal council to end litigation. So Franklin said, save these documents, which I have, they're all originals, on the signing off, and he said, because it's the first time Indian Affairs ever recognized a traditional tribal governing system. So now, like you were saying, the question is, for people who are asking, what government has jurisdiction over where? And the question that's being asked here, well, it's being answered in this document. And when Canada knows about us, because we signed our Declaration of Sovereignty back in 2018, and we sent it, we served it. So, and no response as to what I say here, because that's what we discussed. They didn't respond to, or they didn't refute that we still maintain our sovereignty, because they know legally and historically we still maintain our sovereignty. So when we serve this again, this is going to go on top of the declaration, and I can bet you any money that Trudeau and Carolyn Bennett are going to say, Jesus Christ, how do we deal with these people now? Because we're the only ones that I know of has done this, and we're on record, not just the last few years. We're on record for over 2 decades. I have letters that we sent to former Prime Minister Paul Martin, Harper, and this guy. And the same arguments that you see here, are in those documents. Basically, the main points is that the Prime Ministers negotiated with AFN as nations, but they weren't nations.
No.
They were a creation of the Federal Indian Act. It's basically one federal entity negotiating with itself. Just, they're at this table and that, they keep going back, you're all alone. Yeah. You ask a question, you go over there, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, sure, of course. So who represents the people's interest? And with all due respect, with the Grand Council, they missed the boat. They missed the boat to do something about this. And their role, and I always said it to the Grand Chief, the former, and this new Grand Chief, your responsibility is to the people. Your responsibility is to the nation, not to these secretariats, KMNKL, KO, or Union of Nova Scotia, or Union of New Brunswick Indian. It's to the people, the land, and our rights.
Well, that was in your letter.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And we're not the only ones facing this. I was at a recent meeting with the chiefs of Quebec. And the chiefs of Quebec.
Oh, the chiefs.
Yeah. Ghislaine Picard was there. It was an AFNQL meeting, and the Nescapi chiefs, they're entering into mining agreements, okay? But I agreed with them, and they liked what I had to say, because they said, that land doesn't belong to my community, doesn't belong to your community or your community, it belongs to the Nescapi people. And years ago, the chiefs would get together and say, we're talking about the nation. We're not just talking about my little reserve here and my little reserve here. We're talking about the nation, and those resources, there are resources. So these mining companies are coming in and they're trying to make it look like they're doing us a favor.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening. And so I told the chief, I forget his name, Riel McKenzie, I said, I agree with you 100%. I said, it is your land and it is your territory. And I said, what you need to do, I said, you need to ensure that all your people know their history right now. You need to know your connection to the land. You need to share it with your children. I said, because right now, I said, that will save you. It is yours. It is your land. I said, Canada has a legal fiction that they think they own it, that they, in Quebec, they have this legal fiction. I said, if you are certain and you know your ancestors, I said, talk to your elders, document it, get your territory, put it out there, and you tell Canada and Quebec, this is ours because this is how we prove it. I said, then you tell them, you prove how you think you can give permits to that.
Yeah.
And they can't. They really can't. So this is where it got a little interesting, and they gave them food for thought. And I said, elected chief and councils, yes, right now they're the ones that have the legal authority and whatever. I said, but you can't ignore your ancestors and your hereditary governments, your tribal governments. I said, because, I said, I was getting, I said, you have to paddle both sides of that canoe. I said, you need your tribal councils and you need your elected councils. I said, because if you're only paddling one side of that canoe, what happens? You're just going to go in circles like we've been doing. I said, you need to get together and you need to target things head on with both perspectives, and that's how you're going to do it. But you need to respect your inherent right to the land, and that only comes from the people.
And we talked about this Bruce McIver right here.
Yes.
If the parties can't come to an agreement and understanding of what government role each has to play, they basically, what Canada uses in the provinces, use that divide and conquer, or they're split.
Yep.
So they try to use any which way they can, but you know, why you mentioned something. You know how they can't prove that they don't have the original title. But what they do is enter into these comprehensive land claims.
Yes, you have to be careful of
And
those.
that's where that big wedge with the money. And that's what happened here the last 2 decades.
Well,
That's what they use.
That's what they did with those 10 framework agreements they signed back in the day. They're just adding and deleting to that.
Yeah.
Now we can't. I asked Kathy about the trails of putting up. They got minor tents up there. They got outhouses. They've got changing rooms. I'm like, and Sheila says, yeah. Someone asked, where's this at? So Sheila says, well, that's behind my house. So Fred's in there, right? Oh, and I talked to Kathy, and Kathy says, well, the cabins are there, they're going to our jurisdiction, assert our jurisdiction with the camps, like what we did up in. Fred does not have that authority with that sash. The chief and consul don't have that authority to assert the rights out of 11 kilometer. That's us. So you can't put no camps, you can't make no trails.
Well, the trails that are there, and I remember mentioning to you,
Yeah.
they were funded by Hydro-Quebec.
Yeah.
As I don't know what agreement was there, maybe in hopes that we'd pay. I don't know what the agreement was. But anyway, they did fund that trail, the snowshoe hiking trails up that way. But for the camps, my understanding is, and you mentioned it, Frank, remember you said that they're building camps or they have money for cabins up the woods or whatever? Well, apparently there is, but as individuals, we are all inherent to the land. We have a right to occupy that land.
Yeah.
So this is where they're coming out with these units, these camps. They're small, 16 by 16, I think, and they're putting them out there because as individuals, we have a right to occupy the land.
Yeah.
So,
But that land's going to be occupied through the tribal council, not through the grand council.
I never heard
Which
mention of the grand.
I think that's he was always trying to undermine.
Yeah, well, that's fine with me. I've been dealing with it for
But where is this grand council?
over a decade.
Isn't it from Nova Scotia?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Grand Council's First of all, the Grand Council is only, I used to be in the Grand Council,
Okay.
1990. I got inducted into the Grand Council, and I took my uncle's place that time, Alphonse,
Okay.
because Wendell didn't want it that time, Allison didn't want it, so they asked me. I went over there, and basically, it was on Pentecostal Sunday that they have this big meeting in Chapel Island. And I thought it was a nation government, you know, it was all the districts coming together and address whatever problems you have with the provinces or the federal government. That time we were going through the separation thing with Quebec. They had a referendum that they were going to. So I went over there, and once, well, there was mass when I got there. You got to go to mass,
Mm-hmm.
and the bishop is there, and that's where how you're inducted. The bishop signs that I'm going to be the Grand Council member, and I said to myself, well, what does bishop have to do with our traditional governance? You know, I understand that the church had a lot of influence in 1610 with the Grand Council as a member to the Baptist, but I just didn't understand how much influence they had when the agenda was passed around like this one page. I thought the agenda would be that, you know, I had a problem with, we had a problem here in the community with the referendum, because basically if they separate, they want to separate with our territory and resources. And then when I looked at the agenda, it said who's going to light the candles and who's going to ring the bells. And I said, you know, with all due respect, you know, the elders, elder Grand Council captains, whatever, I'm not here to ring any bells or light candles. I'm here to with an issue that concerns our territory, and I was hoping to have the Grand Council assist us, as it's supposed to be a nation government. But that didn't happen, so I think I stayed in there 2 years or 3 years, and still writing letters to the Grand Chief and the Grand Council, basically reminding them what their responsibility is to the people as a nation government. But it was never dealt with. We wrote letters. There was even at one point we were having those meetings with the other traditionalists, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Remember that time we used to meet? And some of them were part of the Grand Council too. The Bernard boys, Walter and
Lynch.
yeah, and they even left the Grand Council at the same time as I did, because we wrote a letter basically to the Grand Chief that time. Ben Sealboy, what you're doing is committing treason. What you and the Grand Council are doing is committing treason against our people, because you're siding with the Nova Scotia, New Brunswick of Indians, Nova Scotia Indians and the organization in New Brunswick, by rubber stamping all these things that were going on, comprehensive land claims with their secretariats and so forth. And we reminded them that your responsibility is to be telling the government, the federal government, and the provinces as to what we have here in our document, the rejection notice, who we are and where we got our Mi'kmaq sovereignty. It's a creator-given sovereignty, not sovereignty being proposed as to what we're dealing with here in Bill C-15 at CANDRIP. You know, that started from the original 100. They just basically watered it down, slashed it to pieces, and it suits Canada's laws. Basically, affirming that Canada's the boss here. Canada's the original governing body, which is, like you said, they cannot prove that they have title. That's why they're funding all these.
And that's why they're trying to silently extinguish our titles by putting things in clauses, in documents that make us accept that it's only within reserved boundaries.
Yeah.
And for those cabins, I don't believe, I've never heard it associated at all with Grand Council, at all. I just heard it's LMG's paying for them to distribute them.
Yeah.
I haven't heard nothing about Grand Council in Canada.
As far as this is my personal with the cabins, yeah, I heard about it, but if people, and we encouraged it when we were building that camp, Frank, when we started, I remember, we encouraged other people to do the same thing. So if other people want to go and take those cabins and put them here, put them there, that's fine, that's fine. But in their defense, they're gonna have to rely not on the band council because of jurisdictions issue. They're gonna have to rely on the tribal council because we've already set precedent by building that large tribal lodge. Quebec wouldn't stop us. If they could have, they would have. But they couldn't because they knew if they stopped us, it would have been automatically an Aboriginal title claim, and then it would have put a monkey wrench in their NMS process. Because Quebec is part of that. It's a tripartite negotiation process. That's why they didn't want to touch it. And they're hoping that they can get this signed and not deal with it to the Superior Court and the Supreme Court of Canada. They don't want that because of Copeland, the BC case where the Copeland Nation in 2014, Supreme Court of Canada for the first time in its history recognized the Aboriginal title. So right away after that, Canada and the provinces said, oh shit, what if the Mi'kmaq do that? We occupy 5 of the 10 provinces.
What about the water now? What's the jurisdiction on water?
One
Yeah, fishing.
over here,
Yeah.
I think we still control most of the estuary. Salmon, I don't know about lobster. Lobster they signed the rights and reconciliation agreement, but basically if you read the document, DFO's in charge.
Yeah.
Because,
Got 5 years,
funding,
right?
Because of the
Yeah, but it's
funding.
only 5 years.
Yeah.
It's only 5 year, and I attended the presentation that they gave last week. No, this week. Sorry.
Yeah.
And basically, they're trying to just extend the zone into the Scumanak area, whatever, for more lobster. And it's based on the existing lobster law, which was made, I think, was it made in collaboration with the tribal? The lobster law? No?
Do you have access to that agreement?
Can I answer that? Because that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
What they had in their final whereas OIC, that they had put a clause in there that it was sanctioned by the tribal council, when in fact, when we had that meeting at the church, the basement, they sent, what's her name? Germaine?
Yeah.
And we basically, what the first thing that I made sure was that, and we made sure that this is not a consultation meeting. We're not being consulted because our position is, no, if you want to negotiate with DFO and sign an agreement, no. That's our position, because if you do that, it's the same thing like comprehensive. They only come in with their money. They can only come in with their money, with their jurisdiction. It's the same thing with that. And once that's signed, it's signed. I mean, basically, if you read the document, DFO is the ultimate authority. And there's a clause in there.
To approve whatever
Yeah,
that
exactly,
money is being
exactly.
spent on. That, yeah, I know.
So that's what happened with that. They put I don't know, when they made reference to the tribal council, if they were, I think they were using Dr. Fred with the Grand Council.
That's what I was getting to with the cabins and undermining.
But even that, if they do go to court and if they, let's say, rely on the Grand Council has been before the courts in regards to their assertion that they're a nation government, and they didn't win. They didn't win because I think somewhere in that ruling it was passed down that the Grand Council was merely more of a church functionary. Because when you look at it, that's how it was. Every year they meet in Chapel Island, and all it is basically the mass and the prayers, and if you look at the historical part, but even the very structure of the Grand Council is not. It doesn't reflect the nation government, because if you look at the number of captains, Gespegawagi has 36 captains. Now, how do you explain a governing system that can operate so democratically if you have those kind of numbers in one? And basically, Gespegawagi, along with the others, have been able to select their grand chief because of the numbers. Because here for the longest time, there was only one. I was the first one. So if it comes to a vote, forget it. Even if you combine most of the New Brunswick captains and the majority, so the structure is not, there's no balance, there's no checks and balances in that sense. So if they want to rely on the Grand Council, that's fine. On the other side, we've been tested in the Quebec Superior Court, not just once. It was Bastille the first time, and then there was another time when former Chief Dean Vicaire, and basically we filed in the Superior Court for a declaratory judgment, meaning that we just wanted a declaratory statement from the judge versus our tribal council and the band council and what authorities we had within the confines of the territories. So they tried to basically they say the same thing as what Bastille lawyer Corby was trying to say. Oh, well, they're just a made-up organization, Overseers Tribal Council. But that didn't work either, because at that time, it was 2013, I had been in front of the Supreme Court of Canada in 1997, that very same question. Former Chief Douglas Martin, Gespegawagi, the post. You know, we had filed, that was a second referendum where Quebec wanted to separate, so we filed a motion, basically telling Canada and Quebec, because they were talking about how they were going to separate the lands. You can't talk about that. You still are unceded, whether it's Montagnier or Nescapi or
Yeah.
Big Bad. But for some reason, because we filed a motion, they must have been offended that the tribal council would file a motion. It's only the band councils that have that authority. But that question went before the court, but the Supreme Court, after deliberating, said no. That's been dealt with a long time ago. You know, the original nations never relinquished their sovereignty. They still have it, unless we do so freely. You know. So that's I'm explaining the historical. I don't want to get into a pissing contest with anybody. I've always said that it would be better for all of us, for our people, and it would be better for our children if we got together and put aside the differences. Stop that MMS process, comprehensive land claims process, because it's known across the country. That's the only way Canada can say, well, we have title. We don't have
That's right.
that original title yet, but they will once that money exchanges and the agreement is signed. But we don't have to go that way. We had a meeting with an expert constitutional lawyer, Bruce McIver, here, who basically, validated what we've been saying.
Yeah.
You know, he said, well, if you can work together, there's no way that Quebec or Canada, once we can penetrate. But if we can have it here, and we thought for a while, we had that. We thought for a while after, I'll be honest, Kathy, after the elections that we had that alliance, but somehow the alliance has sort of fractured. And I don't know why. I can only guess why. And I'll be honest, I know you're a council member, but I respect you for going with your heart and mind first, and not being influenced by what they think you should, support. You, as you told me before, you support in your heart and mind. It's for the children and the
Yeah.
future. And that's
It always will be.
and that's important. Because I know if you do that as council member, you're isolating yourself right there. You're taking, where is she? Is she with the tribal council or is she with the band council?
It can be both. Until they tell me I can't.
And I commend you for that. There's not many people that can do that.
Yeah, and when I go to these meetings at the AFNQL, the AFN, you have to state your name and where you're from.
Yeah.
And I always say, I'm the sub-chief from the 7th
Yeah.
District Tribal Council of Gespegawagi, and I'm an elected council member of the, and they look at me like,
I can see them.
they look at me like, well, what does she mean?
So what's your on why Scott is not attempted to,
I don't know, I don't think, have they been invited to meetings?
Well, we can only invite so many times.
Yeah, because,
It's gotta be reciprocal.
it has to be reciprocal, because I know, but I know there's a big cry out there in the community. People wanna come to these meetings. They're saying, when is there gonna be a public meeting?
Yeah.
I wanna go to
On
the.
the other side of the coin, we have public announcements and nobody shows up. And so what do you do? Like the old saying goes, you can bring the horse to water, but the horse doesn't want to drink.
yeah.
But I think we should try again to put a public meeting and see who shows up.
Yeah.
And invite chief and council, the ones that wanna,
Well,
and see, like have a,
yeah, well, you know, I was thinking of that because I wanted this meeting for us
right?
now, because, and I know what you're saying, we've tried it. I mean, 3 decades we've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
We've tried every thing that we could think of to get people to come here and, but for reasons that we know, I'm not gonna say reasons for we don't know, we know why they don't show up. There's several different reasons why people, they're scared, they want to be seen here and so forth and so forth and so forth, right? But, I was thinking, we're gonna have this meeting, we're gonna adopt it, because we're not stopping. We've stopped too many times before, and we've lost time, and that stopped, we stopped at, how would you say, like a hamster in a wheel, several years ago, maybe a decade or so. We said, no, we gotta stop this, we just gotta continue, and we gotta keep, we gotta be focused, because if we hadn't done that, if we didn't do that, well then, we wouldn't have had our declaration out there, and we wouldn't have those notices 20 years ago with Paul Martin and Harper. And I'm glad that we did, because we have a record.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not too late for anybody who thinks that maybe they should support this and sign on to it to protect their children's future rights. It's not too late.
Yeah, and that's why maybe if you could call a public meeting, we'd get more people to sign on that, because,
Yeah, well, I plan to put it on Facebook too.
okay,
And whoever wants it, I can email it. I can email it to them so that they could read it. You know, give them time to read it. And what we're thinking of a public is on October 1st, Treaty Day. My recommendation, and we talked about it, we have this signed at our tribal lodge, as we did with the Declaration of our Sovereignty. And if people want to come up there too, like the last time we did that, there was a bunch of people that came up with their children, which was nice. Remember?
yeah,
Everybody brought something.
yeah,
You know, food and whatever, and it doesn't have to be a setting like a meeting setting.
right,
I found after that it was better to have that where people came with their children, and we had it outside. You know, we could set it up where we'd have tables like this. I don't think there's going to be 200 people up there, but even so, if you have 50 people, well, they have these families, and people talk. They go home and talk about this, but they'll have enough time to look at it. I'm going to post it. People that want you know, have it sent through email, that's fine, I'll put that in the, you know, it's easier for them to just print it out and then we'll have our,
would you like me to work on some kind
Well,
of
I'd love to-
transportation?
well, transportation and,
Because the reason being is that a lot of people talk about that, but they never
Yeah.
seen the camp, they don't even know.
yeah,
But they don't have a way to get up there,
yeah.
and
Quite a ways.
it's quite a ways.
So are we inviting chief and council to that,
They could
Sure.
come,
or do we have a meeting before that?
Yeah, we could have a meeting before that, but we have a public meeting, have it up there, and
yeah.
see who comes, and I'm gonna try to get some transportation, even if it's one school bus to anybody who needs a drive up. It's going up this time, it's coming back this time.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be any problem, they can arrange for them to go see the windmills and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, like I said, so I'll see what I can do with that, and I'm pretty sure that, you know, because a lot of people wanna see that.
Yeah.
And they really don't have a way up. Me, I
Yeah.
have a way up, I just don't have time, I've got, like, I'm all over the place like a gypsy.
Yeah. No, but that's what we plan to do,
I guess, what's MMS doing, these days anyway? Are they acting as a 7th district council also?
No, the MMS
Because
is
the
awaiting
last two
direction.
start, making agreements with the lobster fisheries out in the water. I figured it was MMS. And they're,
well, yeah, that's, the way
And
they
Fred-
got the mandate from the three
That's Fred.
communities.
Fred and the previous chief and DFO, they made that agreement. They love Fred, that's what I heard, they love Fred,
Oh, yeah, well,
you know, so.
But MMS is awaiting direction from the councils to work on certain files. So a lot of files are just sitting there, waiting direction. And
one thing the chief and council can do now, and they could have done it when they came in, and we talked about it, we talked enough about it, we talked about it a week before or weeks before the elections, and days after the elections, is work on that statement of Aboriginal title claim. That can be done. As far as the comprehensive land claim, the framework agreement that they're working on, there's a clause in there, all you have to do as the chief and council serve a notice 30 days prior. And that would
as you have now?
turn everything around. That would turn the tables on Canada, because that's what they don't want. They don't want an Aboriginal title claim. If you look at what happened in Gespegawagi, you know, they just did it. And it's out of litigation now, of course. Gespegawagi Lodge
right,
is negotiating with Canada outside of litigation, and as Bruce mentioned. What I didn't know was, because at the time when we met here, it was called the traditional governing system, Gobi, and it's actually a corporation. See, I didn't know that, so there's a difference. It's not, you can't be a corporation
right.
and a sovereign.
Hmm.
You can have, for instance, if the tribal council here wanted to create something for an economic development, well, we couldn't incorporate. And that would take away our arguments that, you know, we are sovereign, we're still a sovereign Mi'kmaq district. So what do? You know,
Yeah.
this is why we just try to pay for whatever we do. When we built our lodge, we just did it, you know.
So what happens when a body works for a corporation, meaning the band office? Canada is a corporation.
Canada is much like a corporation, I agree. And I explained that to some other First Nation groups that I've met with, that I really tell them, you're connected to the land, you've got inherent rights to the land, because you come from that land, you have language from that land, and you're related to that land through ceremony, and everything you've done, your food and everything is from that land. I said, and this is where language comes in important. What is the language of Canada? You can say English, that's the language of England, it's not the language here. The language here belongs to the Indigenous people here, the First Nation people.
Yeah, but Canada will not say that to Quebec.
No, they won't, but I have, and you know, but it's not that it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is the argument, and this is where I had told those chiefs up north, really get your history down pat, because it's gonna save you.
Yeah.
To have and to know your history, and to be able to put it forward and say, this is our history, it comes from our ancestors, comes from the land, comes from the language, it's our title to the land. What's your claim? You're here under, and they have that term called legal fiction. You have a belief.
That's right. And everything that's connected to the land, right, is connected to our kids. We
Yes,
always said the next 7 generations. Right now, we are the 7th generation,
Yeah.
okay? Now, whatever chief and council you are, okay, we're gonna focus on the stewage, right? If they're gonna do backdoor deals without having considered our kids, our grandkids, no. You're doing worse than treason. I can't even talk, I'm so tired. That's worse. If there's only 2, 3 of them in there making these decisions, you better come out now. Because when they do come out, I don't wanna be in your shoes. Because Canada, the nations in Canada, Gary knows he was talking to the people, they're gonna come out. And God forbid lightning's gonna come out of the ground and strike them in the ass. Guaranteed. The time is over that using that 7 generations. That's over. It's time for action with this. Tribal council, that's it. Serve the notice to whoever you need to serve the notice to, and that's it. We're stronger than we think we are. We got more backings than we know.
There's people out there, we've been talking the last, past year, first of all, this CANDRIP, and they know what we're doing, they know what, they're supportive of, what we're doing, the wording that mean, how else can you put it? I mean, this is not something that I created, this is years and years of, working with constitutional lawyers, international lawyers. And basically, they'll say the same thing, they have said the same thing. In our, if you look at the salmon fishery law that we helped create, by the way, we were mandated by the Land Council at that time to create it, and the Rangers law and so forth. It has the same wording with creator given sovereignty. That came from the constitutional lawyers. And their explanation was if you go with the original governing system, it'll be harder for Canada and provinces to challenge us because our roots
Are
go down way
connected to
past,
the land. And
we go past
we-
1876,
Yeah,
the Indian Act. That's why they can't. And with this, when I wrote these letters on behalf of the tribal council to Trudeau and Martin and Harper, they could only come back with saying, trying to make this weak argument that they consider the chiefs and councils created in 1876 to be an offshoot from the original governing systems, which is in fact legal opinions from different lawyers said there was no gradual evolution. They said when the Indian Act was created, it was created for one thing, to wipe out all of our original traditional governing system. That's why it was created, John A. Macdonald, because he knew that if they created their own within the federal entity, they have control over using money. And I think when we were talking with the chief and council before the elections and shortly after the elections, they understood that because Chief Scott said, yeah, he understood that. He understood the roles and responsibilities. So we don't have to stop there. We have to resume on that same path because, we see it, and we see it. There was a gradual stepping back, and it was business as usual. And I wrote that on Facebook. You saw, I'm sure you saw it, and they saw it. I know they didn't like it, we told them before the elections, we'll support you as long as you're upfront with us. But if you're not upfront, we're not going to support you, and we're going to expose, whatever it is that you're trying to do behind closed doors. So, do we want to go down that route? I don't. But if we have to, we will. It won't be the first time. We've been doing it for 30 years. We've been fighting for 30
and
years.
it's this fighting that's keeping Canada in control.
Yeah.
For the most part, the majority of council that I see really believe in sovereignty for us as a nation and the territory. How they go about it, maybe they're not so certain, maybe the legalities, maybe, but when they talk, they really are being conscious about just, accepting reserved lands. They're coming away from that and being more broad in mind of the territory and inclusive of more people. That's what I see. But like I said, how they go about it, I don't know. They get preoccupied with other priorities. They got everything under the sun when you're in there, and so this kind of goes off to the side.
Yeah.
But I know when it does come to forefront, like when we talked about the discussion about a bilateral agreement framework, there was absolutely no opposition to anyone saying that clause should be changed to include territory. So it's just an observation that I have.
Your,
Because it's,
your observations on, the council itself, how many of them understand what's really going on? Are they just there for Monday to Wednesday, get their check? Are they there, where are they? Where's their mind?
I think a lot of them understand what's going on, but where's their mind, I don't know. I think they got other priorities, other, commitments. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that the majority of them understand.
Okay.
I'm confident that they understand about sovereignty. I'm not saying 100%, but
Yeah,
the majority do. There's a lot of seasoned councillors in there too.
yeah.
in Vilsa.
And there's still, do you still have the feeling of opposition in there?
There's always a feeling of opposition when you sit at a council.
Okay.
That'll never stop.
That'll never stop.
Never
It
stop.
doesn't matter.
Okay.
There's always that feeling of.
So that's working, that's also working against us
It is.
making,
Yeah.
Well, it could be, but, I've been involved in politics since 1983, in and out of that council and, what I see,
A lot of times,
No.
silence could be deadly against what we're trying to accomplish, because people are wondering what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everybody's staying silent.
Yeah, what I was saying is, yes, you do have opposition, and that's always been like that. It's always, ever since the creation of the Indian Act system. If you look at the historic stuff, the council members we had here, you could see it. The Indian agent even at that time was the one dispensing money and welfare and whatever, but used some members of council like a favorite. That way he could pass whatever resolutions that he wanted on behalf of Canada. Right-of-ways, that's how we got those right-of-ways, power lines and hydro poles that were done here illegally. Stuck in everybody's land without proper, procedure. But you could see that, and what's happening now, and this was mentioned not too long ago, by a friend of mine saying that, the chief said, well, our hands are tied, we can't do anything. Well, if you have majority, you can do anything. If you have majority, you're gonna have your, non-supporting council members, but if you have majority, you don't worry about those three. That's politics. We went through it in 2018. 2018, we have majority. And what happened then?
you just went through it last time you were in council.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm
that's what I
saying.
say in 2018, they were
That's what I'm
elected
saying,
in
yeah.
council.
Like,
But, I think what has to happen here is the chief and his council members who understand sovereignty, and if they're committed to sovereignty, well, they have to join us. And if they want to know more about sovereignty, and I said it when I was a council member in 2018, we'll show you what sovereignty is. We can teach you what sovereignty is, because some of them don't understand it. Some of them may have read it, but they don't understand it here. And if you're going to understand it here, well, that means you have to make sacrifices as a council member. When I was in there for 10 months, I didn't take a salary. I could have, if I wanted to. I probably saved the man $50,000 on 10 months. And that's not what I was in there for. I was in there to fight for our territory, our rights, resources, and for our children. Now, commitments have to be made. I'm not saying they have to do the same thing, but they have to step back and look at what your commitments are.
Too bad,
to the
Gary.
people.
Money talks and bullshit walks.
Unfortunately.
That's always been like that.
Unfortunately, yeah, you're
That'll
right.
never change.
Yeah, you are right.
We should have a meeting with them, so we'll have some
Well, this is what,
kind of communication to see
trying to do,
the
maybe we
feeling.
could,
See what we see.
open the doors on Treaty Day.
Yeah.
Open the doors to everybody, because there's a
Everybody,
lot of
yeah.
people
Everybody.
that are curious, they wanna, and we have to keep this going. We have to have new members, we have to,
Yeah.
so make that you know, olive branch, extend that olive branch, they say.
What's puzzling is, when we first sat down and started having people sign up, there was 135 families that signed up.
Yeah, even more. We have people from Millbrook, we have people from Indian Brook, Shubenacadie, that signed on to our declaration, 300 and some, that understood it. That understood the consequences of what chiefs and Vance were doing in terms of signing land claims and you know, CANDRIP and C-15, so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's out there, it's there. We have Russ Gladwell whom you invited,
Yeah.
he explained it.
He
Bruce
did
McIver even
explain
affirmed.
it, and like I said, and I see more and more people,
Yeah,
general people out there getting a better understanding
yeah,
of what it means and what it is,
Yeah.
and a contrast between comprehensive land agreements and
Yeah.
modern day treaties,
Yeah.
what's really happening here, and title to the land. And there are other chiefs too that are, you know, out there trying to say, like from New Brunswick, trying to learn more, because it isn't common knowledge, never has been.
Yeah.
But that's why it's our jobs to get it out there as common knowledge before it's too late.
yeah,
And this is why the Canadian government is pressing so hard now. We want bilateral agreements with the communities, nation to nation, nation to nation. And because we're becoming stronger, because we're becoming more wise, the general public, in understanding what sovereignty is and what it means to be the territory owners.
You know, I'm open-minded for new ideas on how to get the people together. Because I've been at this over 30 years, educating different people. Gary,
Yeah.
Frank, you know what I mean? We had Russell Dybel here, very, very, how would you say that?
It's very informative.
Informative, that's the word, informative. Good information for the people. Hardly anybody showed up. We had the lawyer, MacGyver, very few people showed up. We should have had this in a major hall and people should have been packing, what's going on, what's going
But
on?
we did have a good turnout with MacGyver, I
Yeah.
say, because we had about 4 different venues and all of them were full. What I think is gonna work is what Gary just suggested for Treaty Day. A less formal setting, like not a meeting, not a
Yeah.
workshop, not a come sit at these tables and come to a meeting,
Yeah,
because people say, I don't have time for that. You have a gathering,
Yeah.
a family thing,
Yeah.
just like Treaty Day, what Gary's proposing. Up the woods, and you know, people like a cookout, people like
Yeah.
to you know, mingle and whatever, and just by going out and explaining things to them.
Yeah.
You know, what does it mean? You know, what do we have to look out for? I know you send me stuff on Facebook, I share it about, you know, what we have to be careful for signing these First Nation financial management acts, the land management acts, and whatever.
I'm still trying to figure out, if the rest of the people in here, how far did the previous chief bring us in this, fourth stage? Finished, if he would've came back in again, that was it. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know. I don't have a clue what went on with him in Canada.
It's close, like the MMS process, there were different stages, and I think they were close to their final stage.
But
yeah.
nothing has been signed, nothing's been,
Yeah.
we've lost nothing, nothing's been, there's
Yeah.
been a lot of work and negotiations here and there, but nothing is final with anything. So again, it's good timing that people are aware
Yeah.
of sovereignty, understand fully what it means when you sign a comprehensive agreement, that you're actually accepting that, okay, I'm getting money for this land, and so this land is all I whatever accept as being my land, or whatever you got title, or you sold title, or whatever it is that the government tries to do with their modern day treaties and
Yeah.
comprehensive land agreements, because that's what they use now, the words modern day treaty.
Yes.
And self-government, the right to self-govern. Yeah, we have the right to self-govern, but self-determination comes first. It's our terms. And there's a big difference between, and Russ Diablo taught me that, between self-determination and self-government. Self-determination is what we decide. as a people, what we want. It's us, self-determination. Self-government is what Canada okays that we decide is for our governance. And there's a huge difference there. And when you look at a lot of these new agreements and whatever, it's just that there's all kinds, oh, you can decide this, you can decide that, you can do this, do whatever you want, except for this. And it always has to do with the title to the land. They want to extinguish it by default.
And the important thing is what you just mentioned. If you look at the Constitution, which was brought back in 1982, in there, they fought for that. Credit has to be given to the National Indian Brotherhood that time,
Mhm.
like Bill Wilson, Smokey Briere, and all the chiefs that fought with Trudeau. They finally had Canada and the provinces accept Section 25 and 35. And in there, what you just said, the Royal Proclamation of 1763, that's recognized, and then on the bottom, one sentence says, and any modern day agreements that will be signed. So the modern day agreements, if signed, sort of displaces the
Right.
1763. That's why they put that clause and a sentence in the bottom. Or if any other, and when Canada knew what it was doing in 1969, so that's what they're using in the comprehensive land claims.
Modern day agreements.
Yeah, and it's going to be, the clauses are in there for greater certainty. Once that agreement is signed, then the greater certainty, as Franklin Gertler used to say, Peter Hutchins, greater certainty means Canada will now have clear title once the money is exchanged.
But that being said, there's nothing wrong with entering into a modern day agreement, so long as you're not giving up your title to your land.
Exactly.
See, I think that's why it's very important that the chief now and council come and sit with us, because Gertler once said, everything that chief and council signs since back then is all illegal. You know what I mean? They do not have jurisdictions to do these modern day treaties
Not without the people, so.
Not
without the
without the
people,
people,
which
and-
they've been doing.
And we have to define what means consultation with the people. Previous administrations sometimes would hold a small public meeting, maybe 12 people would show up.
Yeah.
They said a meeting was called of the people, and the people consented to this.
Yeah.
12 people can't speak for a nation of 3,500 people.
And how long has that been going on?
Don't know. But like I
But
said,
that was reading something on that LLP, something, that land thing.
yeah, the land management.
Anyway, it said it was 25% plus one, and if they didn't come to a consensus on something like that, if the vote didn't come through, they can drop it to 10%.
Wow, so 10% of our population is 350 people. That's not a lot.
No.
You know, so that's a lot of that stuff that's out there. People just don't realize what's
Who's
going
putting
on.
those rules in?
Huh?
Canadian government is usually the one that enters into the agreements or making what they accept as self-government, what they accept. It's, when we do
Yeah.
self-determination, it's this process here. We sit here, we tell this, and then we tell them. This is self-determination.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they accept it or whatever, this is
No, it
our
doesn't matter.
self-determination. We have told them.
Yeah.
And
That's the
what,
beauty.
what they think of it is really irrelevant.
Yeah.
We have self-determined.
Mhm.
So they're preaching out there to, you know, the United Nations, to the rest of the world, oh, we want to acknowledge Indigenous people, the First Nation people. You've given them the right to self-govern. You don't give people the right to self-govern. We have that right.
Yeah.
You know, they have to acknowledge it and respect it. And there has been progress. I can't say that it's different now than it was, you know, 30 years ago even. There's more openness, more acceptance of it. And it is because of these land, these court cases, and
Yeah.
so they have no choice to.
2014 is a
Yeah,
prime example.
It gets kind of, I don't know if the word's dangerous, people talking amongst each other saying, Municipality. Mike, what's municipality? I don't know. Google it.
The municipalities is we're gonna answer to the province for licenses and answer
Yeah.
to the province for, you know, okay, what do we need? You know, you need a license on your boat to take it in the Restigouche River, you need a license to do this, to do that, but it's our territory. Why do we need to answer?
You know, sometimes relaying that message like that really hurts individuals. You know what I mean? Like, how come we didn't know this and that and
Well,
that? You know what I mean?
and that's just what, like I said, we really have to have a big push to make sure everybody understands, because not everybody is aware. People are very busy with their daily lives. They're not thinking the way we think. They're not thinking of sovereignty and land and whatever. They're thinking, you know, how am I going to pay my bills? Where am I going to get groceries Friday? You know, what am I going to do? That I have this, you know, family problem. And they're not thinking big picture. Not everybody's, you know, cut out for that. You know, a lot of people are so wrapped up in their own personal dramas that they can't think like that. So it's to get out there.
Generation.
Yeah, target the youth, target the teenagers, the youth, make sure they know. And make sure they know that their history and their connection to the land.
And we have to do it together, that's the
Yes,
thing.
Yeah.
We'd be more powerful united than separated.
yeah, so I agree.
Yeah, and what I'm gonna do is I wanna read this,
Okay,
and then, Frank had bought tickets over here, for fundraising, you know, $2 a ticket. And basically it's for, we have to do work on the
Some
tribal
maintenance
laws,
on
get it ready for this, October 1st, gathering that we're gonna have.
okay,
Hopefully we'll get a lot of people, we'll try to, make, picnic tables, where people can sit, that's how we did last time. We had, AFN covered the Declaration of Sovereignty, reading that time.
okay.
Excuse me, Gary,
Yeah,
keep making picnic tables until they'll steal them from you anyway.
You see all the picnic tables they
When
built
they
up
stole
there?
Frank cut wood and they stole all his wood.
You should see all the beautiful picnic tables they're building up there.
Really? I
Yeah.
haven't been up there for years.
Oh, my
Last
God.
time I did.
Maybe we should put in a request for a few now.
I got one, scared ticket.
yeah.
But remember I
This
had,
is for the meeting, this is for your tickets.
What Frank was looking at also, we were working at is maybe take an envelope, sell what you can sell, each of us, we have families, whatever, it doesn't mean you have to sit out there and sell them, but
I got 5
You know all
packages with
about-
100
you know all
tickets in
about-
each.
This what we're gonna do is called Chase the Chief.
so I'm gonna read it,
Anyway,
and then Frank will
Go ahead.
distribute the,
Table there,
I'll
donate
take,
picnic table.
All right.
yeah, so like I'm saying,
Frank,
I'm gonna donate the picnic table.
he's gonna
there.
donate a picnic table.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
awesome.
Right on, thank you. Okay, so it's Title 7 District Gespegawagi Position Paper on Canada's Bill 15. I'm also going to revise this because I have to add CANDRIP also on the
Okay.
title. Whereas we, the representatives of our original ancestral 7th District Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council, governing system and plans, families have existed since time immemorial. And that's basically what we've been saying tonight. Whereas we, the original Mi'kmaq peoples of Gespegawagi, were vested by Gizi the Creator, the inherent right to be sovereign Mi'kmaq peoples, and thereby are duty bound to protect our Creator-given sovereignty and our Mi'kmaq peoples of our 7th District Gespegawagi from any intrusion by Canada in eroding and terminating our Creator-given Mi'kmaq sovereignty. We spoke about this tonight, about the importance of, like Kathy just said a minute ago, we just serve it. And we don't expect anything for them to come up and say, okay, but this is just to set the record that we are going to need it. There's going to be a fight here down the road. We're not going to be alone. This is right across the country. And as you know, Kathy, people like Russ Taibo and
Yep.
his connections and Mike, about the Mohawks. I met with them, as I was saying earlier, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. Everybody's going to be looking at this when the time comes that they want to assert this.
Yeah. Was there any talk of a gathering?
No idea.
No.
Whereas our creator given 7th District Mi'kmaq sovereignty was further affirmed by the signing of our peace and friendship treaties between our original Mi'kmaq Nation 7th District chiefs and the British Crown in 1752, 1760, 61, and 1779. These are all treaties that were signed by district chiefs. If you read the treaties, you're going to see the district chiefs and sub-chiefs, or first or second chiefs. That was our district, 7 district structures. Whereas our creator given 7th District Mi'kmaq sovereignty was also affirmed by the 1763 Royal Proclamation in the Ceded Lands Protection Clause, which states, and whereas it is just and reasonable and essential to our interest in the security of our colonies that the several nations or tribes of Indians with whom we are connected and who live under our protection should not be molested and disturbed in the possession of such parts of our dominions and territories as, not having been ceded to or purchased by us, are reserved to them, or any of them, as their hunting ground. And that's an important clause in the 1763 Declaration, basically affirming that we are still the title holders until we really either sell it or give it up. Whereas our original Mi'kmaq 7th District Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council governing system, its members and the families have sent previous notices to the Government of Canada. The first notice dated June 3rd, 2010, which was sent to the former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and the second notice to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau dated October 21st, 2015. Whereas both notices sent to Prime Minister Harper and Prime Minister Trudeau contain the historical and legal facts contained in this document that support our continued creator given Mi'kmaq sovereignty, and both times did not reply to recognize or refute our historical and legal facts supporting our continued Mi'kmaq sovereignty. See attached notices and response letters. Whereas our original Mi'kmaq 7th District Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council governing system, its members and families had also served notice to you, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, dated January 26, 2019, the declaration of our 7th District Gespegawagi sovereignty. Again, you as the Prime Minister refused to reply or recognize or refute our historical and legal facts contained in our declaration of our 7th District's Gespegawagi sovereignty, supporting our continued Mi'kmaq sovereignty. And the only response letter was that from your underlings was that they had received our notice to you and our declaration of Mi'kmaq sovereignty document and were to be passed on to Minister Carolyn Burnett for her information and consideration. See attached letter by T. Jolliker. Whereas it is clear to our original 7th District Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council governing system, its members and families, that you, Prime Minister Trudeau, and former Prime Minister Harper deliberately refuse to acknowledge or respond to our historical and legal facts that support our continued Mi'kmaq. Whereas you and former Prime Minister Harper, and in collaboration with AFN, have been working on your own watered-down version of UNDRIP since 2010, which Chuck Straw called it an aspirational document, as seen by Mr. Straw's letter dated July 19, 2010, and ensuring us this aspirational document, UNDRIP, will be fully consistent with Canada's Constitution and laws. See attached response letter by Chuck Straw. Whereas since your election in 2015 as Prime Minister, you and your Liberal government, along with AFN, have worked on and finalized your watered-down version of what our supposed aspirational nation government should be under Canadian law in your Bill C-15 UNDRIP Act, which has passed third reading and is now before the Senate. Whereas several of our original nations, allies throughout Canada, have concerns that Bill C-15 UNDRIP Act mirrors Canada's view in minimizing and marginalizing our original creator-given sovereignties by calling it as a mere aspiration. That should be under Canada's Constitution and laws. We see our creator given 7th District Gespegawagi sovereignty as already defined and affirmed by the King of England when our 7 ancestral district chiefs signed our peace and friendship treaties 1752, 1760, 61, and 1779. with the British Empire, and also defined and affirmed by the 1763 Ward Proclamation, which is also imperial law and entrenched in Canada's Constitution. We therefore, the representatives of our sovereign 7th District, Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council, its clans or families assembled, declare that the Government of Canada has no historical or legal authority to grant us our Mi'kmaq sovereignty through its watered-down Bill C-15 UNDRIP Act. Our 7th District Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council's sovereign status is a creator given right that has existed since time immemorial. We, the 7th District Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council, its representatives and clans or families support our allies, the original nations, and its peoples throughout Canada in rejecting the Bill C-15 UNDRIP Act that, as written in its current provisions, does not affirm or recognize our original creator-given sovereignties and were affirmed by the signing of the 1800 treaties throughout Canada, and also affirmed by the 1763 Royal Proclamation. Further, you and your Liberal government's collaboration with the Assembly of First Nations during the making of Bill C-15 and UNDRIP Act, and recognizing AFN as the only nation government that represents all of the original nations and peoples throughout Canada, created a false illusion, when in fact, historically and legally, AFN and all of the Indian Act chiefs and land councils were created by the 1876 Indian Act legislation. Your Liberal government and the Assembly of First Nations and its Indian Act chiefs are actually one federal entity negotiating and defining what our self-government should be. Your Liberal government and the AFN are mirrored in a profound conflict of interest relationship. The term AFN was first introduced in 1980 by the former National Indian Brotherhood, and they started calling their organization the Assembly of First Nations. They have been effective in serving the federal government by eclipsing our original nation governments that at once exercised our jurisdictions across Canada for generations prior to contact. In order for the Bill C-15 UNDRIP Act to be accepted by our 7th District Overseers Tribal Councils, tribal representatives, its clans or families, Canada must accept the historical and legal facts that AFN, its Indian Act chiefs and band council are not the legitimate original nations of our original peoples. Canada must fully dispel the great fraud and lie that Canada's first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald's racist and genocidal 1876 Indian Act that created those band councils are the only legitimate government systems of our peoples. Further, Canada make amendments in the Bill C-15 UNDRIP Act to include wording in it that is specifically clear and not ambiguous that Canada recognizes our 7th District Gespegawagi governance system and our creator-given right to be a sovereign, which was affirmed by the 1752, 1760, 61, and 79 Peace and Friendship Treaties and the 1763 Royal Proclamation. Both the Aboriginal or treaty rights and 1763 Royal Proclamation are protected in 1982 Constitution Act, Section 25 and 35. That Canada return all of our 7th District lands and resources that are held in trust and compensate our people for loss of use and royalties, past and present, and negotiate for future coexistence, co-management, and future co-sharing of royalties with the Quebec and New Brunswick provinces that occupy our 7th District ancestral district homelands. Compensation of past loss of use of our territory and loss of royalties should be made available through the Indian Trust Fund that Canada created when he was mandated to hold our unceded Indian lands and resources defined in the 1763 Royal Proclamation. And this is basically, this clause would ensure that under the comprehensive land claims, Canada doesn't buy out our district title. And if it does buy us out, there's a problem that most of the licensed under comprehensive land claims, there's a clause in there specifically saying that any licenses that were issued to oil and gas, mining, forestry, whatever, recreational organizations, you can't claim those, can't claim them. So basically, that doesn't leave very much territory for us to get back when it's signed. But if our position is this basically, and this, what it says here in this clause, if you look at the United Nations Human Rights Commission, they have what they call a special rapporteur that comes to Canada every 5 years and travels across the country, basically creating a report card on Canada, how Canada treats its Indians, what it likes to say. Well, they found that these comprehensive land claims were underhanded for Canada to use, using money to buy us out. They said, rather you should be dealing with them as equal partners. And this clause reflects that. And the important thing on this side, when we were fighting with the environmentalists in Gaspé, the Junex environment, there was a lot. There were students and just people across the province that basically, when we were meeting with them and discussing our use, that we were going to file an Aboriginal title claim to Quebec Superior Courts, that would be the big stick to use against the corporations. They said, yes, you hold the key. You as the original nations hold the key, because that's the only thing that's going to stop corporations, because of their bottom line. They don't like to invest. The investors don't like to invest in uncertainty. So that's where this comes from. Future coexistence says that it will help you. Will help you fight once we file. And I have a friend of mine who's holding money that was raised during that time. There's still $5,000 there. That's why I said if we decide to go with Bruce McIver, he could probably do the statement of claim, which is not a big thing. It's a statement of claim. That's how you enter it in the courts. But it's after the legal work, but we don't worry about the legal work. We file it. It'll be filed. And then Canada, when they with us booked it, once they filed, they said, oh, we can talk about this. We can talk about the co-sharing, see? But as Bruce says in the emails that I shared with you, said you have to use your Aboriginal title claim to get their attention. That you mean business. Well, that's why this clause is in here. Thereby we, the 7th District, Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council, for all historical and legal purposes, wish to reiterate that we cannot accept Canada's Bill C-1500 back. In its current form, and its provisions are lacking any true substance in the recognition and affirmation of our Creator given sovereignty by Canada. Canada cannot continue to push their Bill C-1500 back, which they recognized and negotiated with the Assembly of First Nations, its Indian chiefs, and the original nations, when in fact, as the original nations, when in fact they are a federal entity created under the 1876 Indian Act. Our 7th District Gespegawagi governing system will consider the passing and acceptance of the Bill C-1500 Act null and void, will not be binding upon our original 7th District's Gespegawagi Overseers Tribal Council, its representatives, and clans or families residing in the provinces of Quebec, New Brunswick, that occupy our ancestral district territory. Yours will remain in peace and friendship. So along with this, the signing with the district chief, there's going to be a signing sheet that the declaration of sovereignty for anybody that wants to sign. But of course, the sub-chiefs will be right after mine. They don't have the signing sheet. And what we've been discussing now, and we shared with you that we're looking at October 1st, Treaty Day. They've been having this ceremony, that will be the last meeting. Once this is final, it may change here and there, but not much. If anybody has any comments to add to it, or any changes that you think has to be added to it, you do so now, and I'll make the changes.
Yeah, and you had mentioned about going back to using Confederacy.
Well, we're working on that because the Confederacy right now, Lebanon Confederacy is in shambles.
Okay.
Because what happened was, the Confederacy recognized the Vermont group who claimed to be Abenaki. They didn't have the correct genealogy anyways. So therefore, one nation cannot accept a nation to be under the Confederacy. And that was the discussions that we had. We can't do that. You know, the Confederacy was always, every nation had say, no matter what it was, it had to be brought to the table. But we're working on that to, you know, to redefine what our protocols are under the Wabanaki Confederacy. Like you were saying about the Métis and Canada likes to accept those because they're ready to grab at anything in terms of land and natural resources. We just have to look at the Algonquin comprehensive land claim. How do you say, they didn't recognize the original Algonquins, but yet they recognized on the Ontario side the pretend Algonquins.
Pretend,
Yeah. So if nobody has any additions, concerns, I mean, we've read this, I think it's the third time. And basically, if everybody agrees that, you know, it's, you don't have to, I should say we have to do it now. You can, it's from now till October 1st, you know, I can change it.
Okay.
You know, you come up with that on your part. But but when we presented it with the Mohawks, they liked, they said the words are very, very, very strong. Yeah. And then they said the same thing. They said what you're saying. It doesn't matter if Canada, they can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
There, this is our position. This is us. This is who we are. And that's the important thing.
Self-determination.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that is promising. You know what I mean? And feeling like we're all alone. You know, when we start seeing other nations involved with the same
Problems.
problems,
Same.
and they're there, let's do it, you know?
And it's important we do this because eventually it's going to work itself in these courts, but also the international. Because when they adopted the original UNDRIP, there was 200 and some countries that supported it, that voted for it. That's how it came into being, UNDRIP, the United Nations Indigenous, that's how it came to be. And when we met with the Mohawk, with the other women and the other warriors, when I was there 3 weeks ago, they said the same thing. We have to find those countries that supported that, and because they supported our right to be sovereign. And that's the whole argument, right? It's not an argument, but it's a factual point that has to be. And then when I said about the UN rapporteur, special rapporteur, he supports what we're saying here. But Canada, because our rapporteur doesn't have any legitimate teeth to enforce UN regulations, Canada just sort of went around him saying, oh, the Indians like the comprehensive land claim. No. Most of our people don't even understand what the clauses are. But they go back and tell the UN human rights over. They don't have a problem with that. We have different nations that decide they're onto it. When they signed it, yeah, but how did they do it? You know, it's unfortunate, but we never had any real public meetings about, when you have a public meeting about rights, this is how you do it. This is how we do it. We read it. Anybody who has questions about it, go page by page. You just don't say, well, this is good for us and this is what's going to happen. No, that's not the way. You know, you have to show. You have to, like Kathy was saying, a lot of people don't know about such things. Well, you have to at least try to educate and accommodate, and that's the right way. So with this, that's it for me. I know people are tired.
Meeting adjourned?
I'm glad.